Okay, so today's lesson, we're going to do some review questions. We're going to look at solving for equations of a line in the different forms we've talked about. There's the general form, which is ax plus by plus c equals 0. There's the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And then the last form that we talked about last class, which is the slope point form, which was y minus y1 equals x minus x1. So here we have an equation, here we have 2 points given, point P and point Q, and that's all that's given. We have to come up with the equation of the line. They want it in general form. So anytime you're just given 2 points like this, always figure out the slope. All right, so let's figure out our slope, which is rise over run. So rise is vertical, so you look at your y points. So let's just do negative 6 minus negative 1, which becomes negative 6 plus 1. And then negative 2 minus 3. And our slope becomes negative 5 over negative 5, which is equal to 1. So our slope is 1. So now, because we have a point, we have 2 points, so you'll use a 1 point, either one, and you have your slope. You can use the slope point form, which is y minus y1 equals x minus x1. All right, so we have our slope here, and we'll use one of our points to figure out the equation. So let's just use 3, negative 1. So I'm going to use 3, negative 1 as the point. So y minus negative 1 becomes y plus 1. Our slope is 1. And then x minus 3. All right, so next, we do have to put it into general form. So let's just work this out and then make our equation equal to 0. So we end up here, y plus 1. 1 times x, that's just x. 1 times negative 3, that's just negative 3. So we have y plus 1 equals x minus 3. And x is already positive on the right-hand side, so let's move the y plus 1 over to the right-hand side. So we're going to subtract the y, and we're going to subtract the 1. So subtract 1 and subtract y like that. Oops, to make our equation equal to 0. We end up with x minus y. Negative 3 minus 1 gives me negative 4. So there we go. Our equation is in general form. All right, so question number 2, it's still on page 587. Equation of a line is what we have to figure out in general form of a line that's passing through the point 5, 0, and is perpendicular to the line 3x minus 5y plus 17 equals 0. All right, so this is in general form. We need to figure out the slope of this line and then figure out what the perpendicular slope would be. So 3x minus 5y plus 17 is equal to 0. Let's change this into the slope-intercept form, the y equals mx plus b form. Then we can figure out what our slope is. Okay, so I am going to take this negative 5y and move it to this side. Okay, all I've done is add 5y to both sides. This is what it looks like now. And then all I have to do is divide by 5. Both sides have to be divided by 5. That gives me 3 over 5x plus 17 over 5 is equal to y. All right, and you can always rewrite that the other way around. So y is equal to 3 over 5x plus 17 over 5. All right, so now you can see it's y equals mx plus b form. There's our slope, 3 over 5. So since the slope is 3 over 5, the perpendicular slope would be negative 5 over 3. I'm just going to write perpendicular slope is therefore negative 5 over 3. All right, negative reciprocal. So now we have our slope. That's the first part. All right, next, it's going through the point 50. This line is going through the point 50. This is x, and this is your y. So don't confuse that with the y-intercept. This is the x-intercept. So we can use this as a point on the line, and we can use our slope point form. Again, slope point form is y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1, and the point we're using is 50. I'm just going to put that here on the side. That's the point we're using, and we already know what our slope has to be. It's negative 5 over 3. So we end up with y minus 0 equals negative 5 over 3, and x minus 5. There's our point for x. All right, so that's our equation in slope point form. And we are required to put it into general form. So let's change this to general form. All right, so the first thing we have to do is get rid of this fraction. So we have to multiply the whole equation by 3. So I'm just going to show that here. So 3y minus 0. So we multiplied by 3. And so I'm just going to show it up here. If we multiply this by 3 and we multiply this by 3, that's going to cancel out like this. And on our right hand side, we're left with negative 5 times x, and then negative 5 times negative 5, which is plus 25. All right, and then on the left hand side, we're left with 3y equals negative 5x plus 25. Okay, so in our general form, we have to make sure our x is positive. So we're going to move everything to the left-hand side, and that's going to become, we have to write with x first. So 5x plus 3y, and then we subtract the 25 over, so minus 25, and that's equal to 0. Is equation, we have to figure out our equation in the general form of the line that has to be perpendicular to 5x minus 7y minus 10, and it's going to have the same x-intercept as this line. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is figure out what the perpendicular slope will be. So using this line, because it's perpendicular to this line, so 5x minus 7y minus 10 is equal to 0. And let's put it into y equals mx plus b form. All right, so to do that, I'm going to bring the 7y over to this side. So we have 5x minus 10 equals 7y. And then I'm going to divide by 7. That, and that gives me 5 over 7x minus 10 over 7 is equal to y. All right, so that's our y equals mx plus b form. So our slope here is 5 over 7. So the perpendicular slope will be the negative reciprocal, so negative 7 over 5. All right, so we have our slope. The next piece of information we know that is that this line is going to have the same x-intercept as this line. So to do that, we need to figure out what the x-intercept is. So how do we find x-intercept? You make y equal to 0. So make the y equal to 0 to figure that out. Okay, so we had x minus 2y minus 12 equals 0. And we're just going to make y equal to 0. So it becomes x minus 2 times 0 minus 12 is equal to 0. And negative 2 times 0, that's just 0. So we have x minus 12 is equal to 0. And then x will be equal to 12. All right, so that is our x-intercept at 12, 0. All right, so our y was 0, our x is equal to 12. There's our point, 12, 0. So now that we have two pieces of information, we have our slope now, we have a point on the line, so we'll use our slope point form to figure out the equation. So like this here. So y minus y1 is equal to m x minus x1. All right, so y minus 0, our slope is negative 7 over 5. And then our point for x is x minus 12. Okay, so there's our equation in slope point form. We have to put it into general form. So first thing we have to do is multiply everything by 5 to get rid of this fraction. So multiplying by 5, multiplying by 5. Okay, so here the 5 and 5 cancel out, and then we're left with 5y equals negative 7 times x, so negative 7x, and then negative 7 times negative 12, which is plus 84. Okay, and negative 7x, we have to make sure it's positive, so we have to move everything to the left-hand side. So we're going to add 7x, we're going to subtract 84, and that gives us 7x plus 5y minus 84 is equal to 0. And that is our equation in general form. All right, so our next examples we're going to look at is we're given an equation and we have to figure out how we can sketch this graph out without altering the equation. So the first one here we have y equals 2x plus 4. Now again, you can always put this into your calculator, all right? So put it into your graphing calculator and you can get your sketch as well. But looking at this, y equals 2x plus 4, I can easily graph this because I have a y-intercept here. That's my y-intercept, and then that is my slope. So because I have those two pieces of information, I can do my sketch. So my y-intercept is at 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my y-intercept. And my slope is 2 over 1, meaning my rise is 2 and my run is 1. And also we have a positive slope, so we know that the line is going up. All right, so knowing those pieces of information, we can sketch this. So over 1 up 2, over 1 up 2, and so on. So once you have minimum 2 points, you can then just connect the dots and you would have your line. And again, you can put that into your graphing calculator to confirm as well. All right, so next we have the equation y minus 2 equals 2x plus 1. This is the slope point form. All right, but we know here that's our slope. So 2 is our slope. And we also can figure out a point because this is the slope point form. So our x point is negative 1 and our y point is positive 2. Oops, I'll just put 2 like that. So we have a point on there, negative 1, 2. So once you have two pieces of information like that again, we can graph this. So we'll graph our point at -1 and 2. There's our point. So we know our slope is 2/1. Our rise is 2. Our run is 1. It's a positive slope, so we know the line is going up. All right, so up 2/1, up 2/1. And then you can connect those together. All right, so this example, we have 2x minus y plus 4 equals to 0. And if we need to do a quick sketch of this without altering the equation, we can easily find our x-intercept and y-intercept. So to find your x-intercept, make y equal to 0. To find your y-intercept, make x equal to 0. Okay, so x-intercept then, I'm just going to do it right down here. X-intercept, I'm going to make y equal to 0. So 2x minus 0 plus 4 equals to 0. So we're left with 2x plus 4 is equal to 0. And we're just solving for x. 2x is equal to -4. And then divide by 2, both sides. X is equal to -2. All right, so that would be the point -2, 0. So -2, 0, right there. So we have 1 point. Next, we can figure out our y-intercept. I'll just do it right here. And we can figure out our y-intercept by making x equal to 0. So our equation is up here. We're going to make x equal to 0. So 2 times 0 minus y plus 4 equals 0. And that gives me -y plus 4 equals 0. Subtract subtract the 4 over to here. -y is equal to -4. Divide both sides by -1. So y is equal to +4. Okay, so our point here would be 0, +4. So I'm just going to add that point. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, you've got 2 points now. You can connect them together and you have your graph. All right, if you were to put this into your graphing calculator, you would have to change this equation to be y equals. All the equations that are put into the graphing calculator have to be changed to that form. Okay, so next we're looking at slope as a rate of change. So here we have a graph. This graph represents the distance traveled by a car as a linear function of time. So looking at this graph, our y-axis is distance in kilometers and our x-axis is time in hours. So we're given the 2 points here, 3 and 120, 1 and 40. 2 points are given to us. So since we have the 2 points, we can calculate our slope. All right, so slope is rise over run. So you subtract your y points, 120 minus 40, which gives us 80, and then subtract the x points, 3 minus 1, which is 2. Reduce that or divide it. 80 divided by 2 equals 40, so our slope is 40. So in this example, we have a rate of change, a change in distance divided by a change in time. So first of all, we know our line is going up. It's a positive slope, so we know our distance is increasing. All right, and because we know it's a rate of change and we have our slope, that slope is representing the rate. So the rate would be 40 kilometers per hour. Okay, let's take a look at the next example. Here we have oven temperature in degrees Fahrenheit as our y-axis, and our time is in minutes. And this graph so then is representing the temperature of an oven as a linear function of time. So again, you can calculate your slope, subtract your y points, so 350 minus 50 to give you a rise. A rise is 300, and then subtract the x points. So 5 minus 0, it's 5. Divide that, and we get 60. That's our slope. All right, 60 is our slope, but it represents a rate of change in temperature divided by a change in time. So degrees Fahrenheit per minute. And again, the graph is going upwards, our slope is positive, so it is increasing. At the rate of 60, our slope was 60, so our rate of change is 60 degrees Fahrenheit per minute. Okay, so our next example, we have another rate of change. We have on our y-axis number of liters in the fuel tank represented by N, and it's in distance in kilometers represented as D. So calculate the slope of the line. So in this case, we're doing 40 minus 50 for our rise, which is negative 10, and then 120 minus 20, which is 100. So we do end up with a negative slope, a slope of negative 1 over 10, which is what we should see because the line is going down, so it's supposed to be a negative slope. So again, this does represent a rate of change, a change in the amount of fuel in the fuel tank divided by a change in distance. And our units are liters per kilometers. All right, so like we said, our slope is negative, the line is going down, so the amount of fuel in the tank is decreasing. The rate of change is negative 1/10 liter per kilometer, and that's its rate. The amount of fuel is decreasing at that rate, 1 over 10 liters per kilometers. The last part here is determining the equation of the line in this form, N equals md plus b. If you notice, the reason these have been changed is because our y-axis here is represented by a capital N, and our x-axis is represented by the lowercase d, or for distance. But it is still the y equals mx plus b form. All right, so we have to figure out the equation in this form. So we can use our point slope form, which is shown here, but I'll just quickly do that separately. All right, so again, N represents y-axis, and the D here represents the x-axis. So the point we're using is 2050, and that was from the graph. And the slope we already figured out was negative 1 over 10. All right, so then we just have to substitute these values in, and then put our equation in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, so we get n minus 50 equals negative 1 over 10, and then d minus 20. All right, and now to put this into y equals mx plus b form. So we have n minus 50. We'll multiply this out, so it becomes negative 1 over 10d, and then negative 1 over 10 multiplied by negative 20 gives me plus 2. And so we're at this point, we just have to bring this 50 over to this side, so we just have to add 50. So n equals negative 1 over 10d plus 52. All right, so that is now in the y equals mx plus b form. And this here represents the y intercept. And our slope is still negative 1 over 10. So if we look at our graph again, where the graph is crossing here, that value would be positive 52.